There are those who believe that the patriarchy is a thing of the past, that men have lost the power and privileges that kept them at the top of the food chain. Some people will assure you that, thanks to over 200 years of feminist activism, the patriarchy is obsolete in modern society. Is it though? Because in 2022, there were signs that it was still alive and kicking. Australian men earned, on average, $253 a week more than women. In the UK, men vastly outnumbered women in top jobs and positions of power. And in the US, many states made new laws to ban abortion. What would Virginia Woolf say about all this? A century has passed since A Room of One's Own was first published, and it seems as though men are still in control. Hey team, just a reminder, if you like this video, please hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. It really helps the channel out, and our next upload could be on something taught in your next class. Thanks, and back to the video. In control of what? Well, as Woolf put it, with the exception of the fog, basically everything. Thus, the struggle for gender equality continues. But don't despair. There's a crucial area where men are no longer dominating. Stay tuned to find out more. In A Room of One's Own, Virginia Woolf explores the effect of the British patriarchy on the mind of a writer. Her famous thesis, or central argument, is that a woman must have money and a room of her own if she is to write fiction. Unfortunately, the room and the money are luxuries that few have been able to afford, and this privileged few have been reluctant to see the barriers to these luxuries removed. Using the voice of her author surrogate, Mary Beaton, Woolf considers the relative wealth, security and opportunities that have been enjoyed by men. Remember, an author surrogate is a fictional character based on the author, and Woolf sends Mary on a little adventure. She begins her journey in the fictional setting of the University of Oxbridge, which is where the action takes place in the essay's first chapter. Of course, Oxbridge is a portmanteau, or new word created from the combination of Oxford and Cambridge. Those are England's oldest and most prestigious universities, and Woolf deliberately conjures their patriarchal vibe in Oxbridge. It's an ancient and very impressive seat of learning, and it's designed to give England's young men the best education money can buy. However, Mary is merely a visitor and a woman, so she must watch her step. She's impeded on her wanderings by male officials in protection of their turf. The manicured turf of the quadrangle symbolises or represents the realms of life that have traditionally been dominated by men, like academia and the arts. How dare Mary veer from her path and step foot on that sacred turf? The beadle and librarian who stop Mary in her tracks become motifs, or recurring symbols throughout the essay. They represent the patriarchs who uphold male supremacy and spend a lot of time gatekeeping. But at lunch, Mary gets a taste of the privilege that has been enjoyed by the men of Oxbridge. Souls sunk deep in a dish. Partridges, with all their retinue of sauces and salads, potatoes, thin as coins, and sprouts, foliated as rosebuds but more succulent. Woolf's mouth-watering gustatory imagery helps us imagine the taste of this extravagant meal. It certainly lights up Mary's mind and body, giving her fresh confidence and optimism. To illustrate her post-meal mindset, Woolf alludes or refers to the great painter Thomas Gainsborough. He famously declared that we are all going to heaven and Van Dyck is of the company. What fabulous conviction! Of course, what she means is how good life seemed, how sweet its rewards. Such are the perks of privilege. If this is how patriarchs feel most of the time, no wonder they have the nerve to control everything except the fog. Mary's visit to Oxbridge brings into focus the safety and prosperity of the one sex and of the poverty and insecurity of the other. This juxtaposition highlights the problem with male privilege. It tends to exclude other deserving people from a seat at the table. Remember, juxtaposition is when two things are placed side by side to create an interesting contrast. Having lunched luxuriantly at Oxbridge and dined meagrely at Fernham, the fictional ladies' college down the road, Mary was troubled by the contrast. It was clear that England's men have enjoyed wealth and tradition, while its women have scraped together what little they had. To discover the reasons for this massive inequality, Mary heads to the British Museum, but she leaves with more feelings and facts. All that I had retrieved from that morning's work had been the one fact of anger. The professors, I lumped them together thus, were angry. After examining a bunch of misogynistic, pseudo-academic opinions about women, Woolf considers the professors as metonymic for the patriarchy. Remember, metonymy is where an object or idea is referred to by the name of something closely related to it. So, if all these professors are the privileged ones in society, why are they so angry? While reading the newspaper at lunch, Mary muses how the most transient visitor to this planet who picked up this paper could not fail to be aware that England is under the rule of a patriarchy. Nobody in their senses could fail to detect the dominance of the professor. The high modality, or highly certain and persuasive language in this statement, conveys Woolf's conviction about who's really in charge: men. It's terribly ironic, then, that so many of them are so angry. It's ironic because the situation is the opposite of what you'd expect. If men run the show, shouldn't they be amused? Or at least a little more relaxed? No, they're too busy protecting their turf for that. Woolf surmises that when the professor spouts misogynistic nonsense, it's not because he truly believes that women are inferior. It's because he's obsessed with his own superiority. That was what he was protecting rather hot-headedly and with too much emphasis, because it was a duel to him of the rarest price. The metaphor of the duel depicts the perception of power as precious to patriarchy. It must be protected at all costs. Remember, a metaphor is when one thing is described as something else, even though it isn't literally true. What Woolf's saying is that a patriarch needs to feel superior, and he will defend his power vigorously. According to Woolf, women have played a role in propping up the patriarchy. How? By serving as looking glasses possessing the magic and delicious power of reflecting the figure of a man at twice its natural size. Interestingly, this metaphor positions women as the ones with the real power. If women refuse to be seen as inferior, take back their own power, and stop boosting male egos, then what? Woolf believes the patriarchs will wither like the drug fiend deprived of his cocaine. This simile describes powerful men as being like drug addicts. They're simply addicted to power. Thus, anyone who allows themselves to be seen as inferior feeds the nasty habits of the patriarchy. That's food for thought. Woolf draws on her experience as a critic to explain how male supremacy in society affects literature. The dominant values of the culture we live in are inevitably transferred from life to fiction. And when you live in a patriarchy, it is the masculine values that prevail. So, if a book is about war, critics will call it important. But if a book deals with the feelings of women in a drawing room, like Jane Austen's masterpieces, it will be labelled insignificant. Woolf juxtaposes these values to remind us about the impact of culture on art. We can't escape it. The question now is, who are the cultural icons and influences these days? Who sets the vibe? In Woolf's time, female writers had their work cut out for them. She uses Mary Carmichael, a fictional debut author, to symbolise female writers and illustrate the barriers they faced. The bishops and the deans, the doctors and the professors, the patriarchs and the pedagogues, all at her shouting warning and advice. You can't do this and you shan't do that. Woolf's polysyndeton here, which is when an author repeats joining words like and, creates an accumulation of toxic negativity. The patriarchy in those days was making a lot of noise, not a conducive atmosphere for female writers. And yet, Mary Carmichael did not do so badly. Woolf imagines that, in another 100 years' time, Carmichael will write a better book. She will be a poet. Woolf's temporal reference, or reference to time, encapsulates her hope for the future of literature. Given that we're now living in Woolf's imagined future, we need to do another vibe check. Have the professors, the patriarchs, and the pedagogues piped down enough to let other voices be heard? In her peroration, or the concluding part of her lecture, Woolf offers a final warning. She uses a direct quotation, or a report of the exact words, used by award-winning British author and journalist Mr. John Langdon Davies. He warned women in 1927 that when children cease to be altogether desirable, women cease to be altogether necessary. That's it, ladies. Forget your dreams and careers. Childbearing is your main purpose in life. Laugh if you like. But how many professors and patriarchs still hold this view today? Considering the recent fuss about reproductive rights in the US, it's a question worth asking. But we promised you some brighter news. According to a study in the US, as of 2021, women are now publishing and selling more books than men, and the trend has caught on in the UK as well. This may not be the case in other industries, professions, politics, or even in other areas of the arts. But in the book business, there's been a gender equality revolution. Now, what do you think Virginia Woolf would say about that? We hope you enjoyed this Schooling Online production. For more easy lessons, check out our other videos.